Most Australians have super. Most Australians have never properly looked at whether their fund is actually any good. And the difference between a well-suited fund and a poorly suited one over a working life and into retirement can be significant. So in this video, I want to walk through how to actually evaluate your super fund yourself. Not just for now, but for what it needs to do when you stop working. Because the fund that did a reasonable job during accumulation isn't automatically the right fund to be drawing income from in retirement. And knowing the difference before you get there is worth understanding now. This is something that comes up consistently. People in their 50s who have been with the same fund for 20 years. Sometimes it's a default fund from an employer they left a decade ago. Sometimes it's a fund they chose when they were 30 and haven't looked at since. And when I ask them whether they think it's the right fund for them, most people aren't sure. Not because they're disengaged, because nobody has ever walked them through what to actually look at. This is generally nature, so it's important to consider your own situation. Because the right fund depends entirely on your circumstances. What I'm going to walk through is a framework for evaluation, not a recommendation of any specific fund. So let's walk through the 5 things worth looking at. The first thing is fees, and specifically what you're actually paying in total. Super funds charge fees in a few different ways: an administration fee, an investment fee, sometimes an advice fee, if you've opted into that. And the number worth knowing is your total fees as a percentage of your balance. For a straightforward accumulation account, you generally expect to be paying somewhere between 0.5% and 1.5% per year. Above that, and it's worth asking what you're getting for it. Below that, and you're in a reasonable territory. But fees alone don't tell the whole story, which brings us to the second thing: investment performance. And I want to be careful here because this is where most people make the biggest mistake. They look at last year's return or the last 3 years and draw the conclusion from that. But short-term performance tells you almost nothing useful about whether a fund is right for you. What matters more is long-term performance, ideally 10 years or more, measured against a relevant benchmark and adjusted for fees. A fund returning 8% with fees of 1.5% is delivering less than a fund returning 7.5% with fees of 0.5%. The headline number isn't the number that matters. The net return after fees is the number that matters. The Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, APRA, publishes fund performance data publicly. The government's Your Super comparison tool also lets you compare funds directly. These are worth looking at before drawing any conclusions from a fund's own marketing material. Because funds are very good at presenting their numbers in the most favourable light. Independent data is more useful. The third thing is insurance. Most super funds include default insurance cover, life insurance, total permanent disability, sometimes income protection or salary continuance. And for a lot of people in their 50s, the insurance inside their super is worth reviewing carefully because the default cover may no longer match your actual needs. Your mortgage might be gone, your kids might be financially independent. Your need for income protection changes as you get closer to retirement. And if you're paying for insurance you no longer need, that's a fee you're paying for no benefit. Equally, if your circumstances mean you still need significant cover, it's worth checking whether what you have is actually adequate. The fourth thing is investment options. Most funds offer a range from conservative through to high growth. And most people are in their fund's default option. The default option isn't automatically wrong, but it's worth understanding what it actually is and whether it matches where you are in your financial life. Someone 10 years from retirement probably wants a different asset allocation to someone who retired last year. And if you've never chosen your investment option deliberately, you may be in something that was designed for the average member rather than your specific situation. Now the fifth thing. And this is one that almost never gets talked about. Does your fund work well as a retirement income vehicle? Not just as an accumulation fund, but as an account-based pension when you're actually drawing income. Because these are genuinely different things. Some funds transition seamlessly from accumulation to pension phase. The fees stay reasonable, the investment options remain flexible. The income drawdown process is straightforward. Others charge significantly higher fees in pension mode, or offer limited flexibility around how you draw income, or have minimum drawdown requirements that don't suit your situation. And if your fund isn't well set up for the pension phase, You may find yourself needing to move at exactly the point when you least want the disruption. Worth understanding now while you still have time to act on it. So, how do you actually pull this together? A few practical steps. First, log into your super fund members portal and find your total annual fees as a percentage of the balance. That single number tells you a lot. Second, look up your fund on the APRA performance data or the Your Super comparison tool. Compare 10-year net returns against similar funds. Third, check what insurance you're paying for and whether it still makes sense given where you are in life. Fourth, find out what investment option you're in. Is it the default? Is it deliberate? Does it match your timeline? And fifth, ask your fund specifically what happens to your account when you move into pension phase. What are the fees? What are the income options? How flexible is the drawdown? If they can't answer those questions clearly, that's useful information in itself. Here's the thing about the super fund. Most of them are fine. Fine isn't the same as right for you. And the difference, compounded over 10 or 15 years and through the transition into retirement, can be meaningful. Not dramatic, not the difference between retiring and not retiring, but meaningful enough to be worth an hour of your time to actually check. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation, because the right fund depends entirely on your circumstances. But the framework I've described gives you the starting point for making that assessment yourself. And if what you find raises questions you're not sure how to answer, that's exactly the kind of conversation worth having with a financial planner. If you're approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than figuring this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.